So what is OT or control systems or ICS cybersecurity all about? Why is it important? And what's going on in the world with ICS or OT cybersecurity? I couldn't think of anybody better to ask those questions than Rob Lee. If you're not familiar with Rob, he's the not only co-founder of Dragos and their CEO. I think a lot of people forget about Rob's background. I think a lot of folks do associate with him with working with the NSA in the United States. He built out the program to detect, especially state level adversaries that were targeting ICS or control system environments. I think a lot of people also forget that he was also a state adversary. So he was doing the attacks on behalf of the United States government. So when Rob, who has visibility across all of these different environments and really the world, when you think of it, to understand what's actually happening out there, but also with his background as a defender and a state level attacker. Right? Again, I can't think of anybody else better to ask those questions of. So when Rob says something, I definitely tend to pay attention. So without further ado, here's the conversation I had with Rob at this year's B-Sides ICS conference.
I did not send you any questions in advance,
No.
but nothing. I mean,
Yeah, it's nothing tricky.
nothing tricky. But no, a lot of the questions I think they came up, and I had sent out an email, got some questions from folks to ask, and a couple of things that had come up, and this is like when I especially do highlight things on LinkedIn, especially the ones I think that seem to resonate most with people are also those. Oh, that was interesting, right? And so some of you know I actually had retaken Rob's grid class at the Sans ICS Summit last year. I took it first in 2017. So there were a couple of things that came up out of the new class. The one actually that was probably the most fascinating for me was the least technical.
Yeah, good.
But was, how many of you read Sandworm? Right. So, and for those of you that are here today and you're interested in getting to ICS/OT, it's a great book to read, especially fascinating today considering the state of Russia and Ukraine, and it's a big lead up. But in Sandworm, they feature this guy named Rob Lee and talk about his background.
Andy did not tell me he was writing a book, for the record. Yeah.
And this is what we started talking about in class. And yeah, that you never got interviewed for that book, which I find like, wow, that was amazing. Because it's like, oh, there's this guy, Rob Lee, and he went to Africa and he changed water filters out in wells with control systems. So I figured maybe we'll take a step back, especially for folks that don't know you, and kind of get the little bit more of the how you came up from, I mean, kid in Alabama to going into the military, and kind of a little bit more about your path and where you're
Yeah,
at today.
sure. The short answer of it, both my parents were enlisted Air Force folks for 25 years. Dad turned 18 in Vietnam, kind of big military family. Every generation of my family ever has been in every conflict this country's ever fought. And so as a kid, you almost like have no choice. Because my dad was like, whatever you do, don't go in the military. Which is like the perfect way to be like, I'm going to join the military, Dad. And so I knew I wanted to join. I didn't know what the Air Force Academy was. He was like, yeah, you probably couldn't get in anyways. And I was like, well, hell, I'll get in there then. You know, and of course, he's just smart. He's doing the whole reverse psychology thing. And I get there, and I basically really fell in love with sort of the African Studies program there. And so I did that. Got to go to places like Cameroon. I joined an organization called Engineers Without Borders, which is really around doing fun work around the world to help people. And I was really, really excited about seeing what control systems could do for society. Where you've got some mom and dad, or especially like the mothers, like working like crazy hours, come home, their kids are working. And of course there's like a lot of like populated cities in great parts of Africa too, but there are some like villages that I would put akin to where I grew up in Alabama, and we didn't have much. And those sites, they didn't have power, and they didn't have clean water. And like you just don't know what to take for granted when you just don't have clean water and power. And those kids wanted to stay up and study. And without power, after a day of work, when the sun goes down, you're going to bed. And so for nothing more than building wind-filled turbines and powering car batteries, we could run LEDs in their huts and houses, and they could stay up and study. And the moms got super hopeful about, hey, my kid can get out of this trap by having electricity. And I just thought that was so wonderful. And so when I graduated from the academy, they said, do you want to be a pilot? I was like, no. And so they sent me to South Korea for a while and had me fly in the backseater of an F-16. It turns out there are two-seater F-16s. Fly F-16s for a little bit. Came back, spoke to the general, and they're like, see, don't you be a pilot? I was like, no, sir, you misunderstand. I like planes. I don't like pilots. And they didn't like that. And I didn't join as a pilot. And by the way, I like pilots just fine, but when you're a kid and you see some 24-year-old pilot talk down to your tech sergeant father, like, it doesn't really resonate very much with you. And so I was like, yeah, I'm not going to be them. And I said, how do I get to Africa? And they said, well, I don't know, probably communications. Nobody wants to do communications. You can do that if you want. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And then en route, they changed it to cyber. So I became one of the first cyber warfare operations officers in the military, which is a fancy title for doing the same shit we were doing the day before. And went to the schoolhouse, did all this fun stuff, said, hey, what are you guys doing on control systems? They said, what are control systems? I was like, you know, the whole things that keep all the sunky things sunk, floaty things floaty, the flying things flying. And they were like, we don't know what that is. I was like, you should focus on it. And then I got a knock on the door, and they said, hey, we were rerouting you to Darmstadt, Germany. Welcome to the NSA. I was like, what's the NSA? They were like, don't ask questions, you're in charge. I'm like, in charge of what? And they said, you're now in charge of finding the unknown unknowns. I was like, what the fuck does that mean? And they said, we don't know, but Rumsfeld's really big into it. And I said, well, have you thought about industrial control system threats? And they're like, what are industrial control systems? I was like, okay, that's what we're doing. And so at a time pre-Snowden, I was given opportunities by the government to go do shit. Nowadays, it's very, very hard and very restrictive, but at a point, as a 22-year-old coming in, I had access to all of Signals Intelligence Network, all the CIA sites, everything possible, because I was the topi for anything ICS. Topi just meant, essentially, I was God in the military and NSA for that specific thing. I got a lot of opportunity that others can't get now. And then along the way, met a guy named Mike Assante who said, hey, that's all nice and wonderful, but what are you doing to teach and train people? I was like, fucking, I'm busy, dude. And he's like, wrong answer, dude. I was like, okay. And so Mike and I got to work for a long time together, but then he finally convinced me to pop out and author classes over at the SANS Institute, but I did that in my free time and my leave. And then I finally got out of the military in 2015, thought I was done, just gonna teach SANS classes. And then the whole Ukraine thing happened, and I got called up to investigate that. And then I saw these CIOs and CISOs brief in the National Security Council in the White House telling them if they'd only patched, if they'd only deployed antivirus, Ukraine wouldn't have happened. And I was there. I was like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, so you saw a different attack than I did. And so I had to brief the president and his staff on, like, that's not what this is. That's not what this is going to take. And there's a lot of executives out there and a lot of boards and governments that hear enterprise IT security and all the things that go into it and make a big misunderstanding. They think enterprise IT security means the enterprise. Most of them are stunned to find out that 95% of their budgets go to the IT side of the house, not the revenue generating portion of their house. And they're scared by that when you tell them. So then I started Dragos on the idea of, hey, you got to be able to detect and respond to these things, and we want to show the visibility of it. Since then, just getting more and more involved, and every time I should say no to the next thing, I just remember, again, I'm going to die one of these days. I'd like my kids to have infrastructure, so keep saying yes. And I'll tell you, for those of you that are newer in your career, which looking out isn't a lot of you, I'll tell you, just say yes to shit. Like, just, as long as you're being treated fairly. Like, don't be treated unfairly. Life's too short for that shit. But as long as you're being treated fairly, just say yes to shit, and it'll lead you down a crazy path. And whatever you say yes to, be good at. I like a work-life balance. I promote it in my company. I tell everybody to try to have a work-life balance. But understand there's consequences to everything. If you want to be the world's expert on something, you're not going to have a fucking work-life balance. Like, just take that for granted. And if you want to go home to your kids on time, and spend with your kids, that's as good as being the world's expert in something. So whatever you choose to define happiness by is okay. But don't kid yourself. Like, everyone's like, Rob, how'd you get good at this? I don't know that I'm particularly good now, but I have like 6 jobs currently, you know, and I have since I was like 20. And I generally think that that has made me better in these situations than if I wouldn't have that. So I want you to do whatever you see fit. And I want you to live your life for whatever you want to do. But if you want to get ahead, you got to run a little faster on the treadmill.
That was a great point. You mentioned Mike Assante, which I think you're one of the people that probably knew him best, and you wanted to make sure to bring him up, especially for new folks that aren't aware of Mike and what he's done for for the community and just the world at large. And so I figured, if you don't mind talking a little bit about who Mike is, and I don't know if you have a favorite Mike story you want to share with everybody.
No. But Mike, look, there's a lot of you in this room that knew him. Zach hung out with him forever. Jonathan remembers being at the conferences. There's a lot of people that knew him. But I'll say this: his superpower is bringing people together in ways I don't think they appreciate. Everybody can do a conference like what you're doing right now is very, very important. It's very Mike-like. But bringing people together was one of the superpowers. But the other thing is, Mike was better. Okay, like there's some of you who are like, I'm the best at what I do. Mike was better. I promise you he was. And the crazy thing is, you never knew it. Mike wasn't just humble. It's one thing to be humble. Mike would almost let you believe he wasn't that good. What I mean by that is he did it in such a way to encourage you to be better. And I remember throughout my career, I would always try to one-up Mike. When he was alive, we were like, now we talk nice about him. Fuck, when he was alive, we were just beating the shit out of each other all the time. Because he was military as well, and that's how you say you love you in the military. And so we were always just like trying to one-up each other on stuff. And I'd be like, I just briefed the Secretary of the Navy. And you're like, oh, cool, tell Richard hi for me. That shit. And I'd be like, hey, I just got done briefing the president on this. Take that, kind of thing. And it's like, oh, man, so last week I was here with him, and here's what he was thinking about. Did he bring that up in the meeting? I'm like, fuck you, Mike. So it's just there was nothing you could ever do to one-up Mike. And he had an amazing career across the intelligence community, across military, across private sector, asset owner, CSO of one of the largest power companies out there, one of the plank holders of the ISAC, went to a regulator and people liked him. Like the fuck, man. It's basically the guy could do no wrong, but the main thing is I think he brought people together and helped them find their superpowers. And I will tell you that I'll share a story. So, and it changed for me, and it was probably a little bit. I was very much kill the hype my entire career, as I discussed at the beginning. And right as the threats were starting to really start to manifest more, like the really scary ones, there's still bias in that. If you've defined yourself by something that's bias, and you want to keep defining yourself by that, like if ICS security went away tomorrow, I wouldn't know what the fuck to do. I'd be like, no, there's ICS. You get biased. You want to believe in the thing that's giving you value, and it's bias. And so I had stuck to this, like, ICS threats are real, but come on, we can do this, and there's a lot of hype out there, and blah, blah, blah. I remember on we had 2 conversations. One I've told publicly about the reason I'm still at SANS, because Tim and I were getting ready to leave, actually, and over a lot of reasons. And when Mike was dying, Tim and I remember calling him and being like, great, we're fucking stuck here forever now, aren't we? And he started laughing. He's like, yep. I was like, you asshole, you're going to die, and I'm going to have to be here forever. And yep, that's what happened. But the second conversation is I asked Mike, like, what do you really want people to know? When I ask him, one day when I write the forward in somebody's book that's talking about you, what is it? And I remember telling me, like, Rob, I just want everyone to know we're not ready. And I love this community, and I think highly of it. And you can talk all day long about, the hype and whatever else. But these actors are coming. I've seen behind the curtain. I know their intentions. I know what they're trying to do. And we don't train for it. We don't prepare for it. A lot of instant response even, it's digital janitors. Somebody breaks some shit, we come in, we clean it up, and we leave. Nobody has trained for persistent engagement in conflict, where an adversary is trying to keep you down and they're doing everything they can to do it. And hearing him say, I love this community, but I want everybody to know we're not ready, that's a sobering comment from that guy, And so I think that came at the right time to help me break my bias, go, actually, look at what the threats are doing now. This is quite a bit different, and this is actually concerning. So, yeah, Mike was a good man.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that.
Thanks for hitting with the Mike question, fucking second question in, dude. Jesus. Yeah.
So, all right, we'll lighten it up then. And you mentioned budgets. This was something that I know you stressed at the last summit, right? That 95% of budgets go to the IT side. You mentioned it earlier, right? 5% and maybe less are going, over to OT. And so you get a lot of questions when you especially bring that up and highlight it, because again, it's another one of those I think moments that people need to realize and understand. So for folks that are struggling in those environments, what suggestions would you have for them to flip it, at least where they can start on the OT side, getting the resources that they need?
But I think you gotta have an honest conversation. And I kind of hit on that in the beginning of the talk where I don't want to hear from anybody going to any executive, any board, any public utilities commission, anybody going, I saw this conference talk and here's this new attack method. Or, hey, look, I researched this thing and this could be an issue. Nobody has time for that. And it's not that you're stupid. It's not that your research is not important. It's important to keep doing that stuff. But as you're talking about budgets and attention of an executive staff, they don't have time for things that aren't real. It's all it comes down to. You know, the climate change discussion and the impact on your energy systems across the world, holy shit. All right, we have a lot of stuff coming our way in terms of trying to manage an electric system. Somehow people have convinced themselves that you can do all renewables and spend a bunch of inverter-based resources onto an electric system, and that'll work. And I want my electric system to look like my 401k, diversify. Because at the end of the day, there's this thing called inertia, and it's really fucking important. And it's the only way you're actually going to manage the electric system. And it turns out inverter-based resources don't make inertia, only big spinning, rotating equipment. So you can do hydro, you can do nuclear, you can do coal. I don't care what you do, but you got to spin some shit. All right? And so if you don't have big spinning equipment, you don't have inertia. And physics wins at the end of the day. So that's a problem we're trying to manage. And then somebody comes in and goes, but there's this cool talk at a research conference. It doesn't matter what follows. There's a lot of cybersecurity professionals go, they don't understand cyber. We've got to dumb it down, no jargon. The fuck are you talking about? As a CEO, I have to learn what GAAP revenue accounting is and understand the jargon of my financial officer. And I understand a Big Four audit and what goes through that process. I didn't start my career doing that. I had to learn that as a CEO. A CEO's got to learn cyber. It's okay to have a little jargon. It's okay to have those conversations. But what it's not okay about is having conversations that aren't real. I don't have time for it. Nobody does. But if you say, hey, manufacturing company board, here are 3 scenarios that have actually happened to peer manufacturers of ours. And this is what happened in terms of material impact. Do we want to manage this risk, yes or no? You better get a yes out of that board, or you may have a fiduciary issue across the board and there's a governance discussion. But if there's real risks that manifest in the shareholders or the community that you're serving, whatever, at a board level, you gotta manage those risks. Now, you don't have to go all in. You gotta actually have a plan to manage that risk. And so in the SANS 5 critical controls, a lot of people look at the incident response control, the first one, and go, I need an IRP in the incident response plan. It's not really what that control is about. It's about designing the scenarios that you're gonna design the rest of the controls off of. It's what are the scenarios you wanna be able to respond to. So if I'm a power company and China, Iran, and North Korea team up and come after me, or if I'm in Greenland and the US decides to come after me, I'm going to look at that as an unrealistic scenario for the time being. And if China, Iran, and North Korea team up and come after some power company and they did nothing to prepare for that scenario, I'll sit next to that CEO in Congress and say they shouldn't have. They shouldn't have taken money against the ratepayers to prepare for a scenario that has never happened before. But if that same CEO has not prepared for ransomware across their operations, the Ukraine 2015, the Ukraine 2016 attack, and pipe dream, I'm going to sit on the other side of the congressional panel and say that person's liable. And whatever loss of life or infrastructure that took place, that company is liable. Easy way to think about this. Dow Chemical, good company, I'm just going to pick on them. Dow Chemical decides to build a new chemical plant outside of New York. And let's say that CISA's yelling at them to do MFA across their IT environment. And they decide to say, fuck off. I would say, that's okay. And there's a number of you like, no, it's a good control. The shareholders of that company can choose to manage risks of that company however they want, so long as they consider the risk. It's their choice. Now let's say they know about the Trisis attack that compromises the safety system and causes an unsafe event that kills people. Let's say at that plant, the explosion and the release of chemicals can kill people outside the fence line and kill 100,000 people in New York. Does the board of directors get to make that decision? Fuck no. You don't get to manage risk on people outside the fence line. So as a board, you got to take that scenario, you got to understand it, you got to manage the risk, and you got to work with your partners outside the fence line to include government to understand what the impact can be and what you're doing against it. Long story short, scenarios and having that discussion at a board drive those conversations. If you come in on a security control and say, I have this cybersecurity framework, or you come in on a discussion of here's the attack method, and not here's the start to finish scenario and what the impact is it will be, it's just a light years different conversation. If you're a public company, take an 8K. So if you're a public company, you get breached, and it has materiality, you got to file an 8K with the SEC. And that whole 8K process is very intense. And if you look at your company in realistic scenarios, go reverse engineer the 8K. and say, what is my CFO, CRO, and outside counsel going to want to fill out in the event of an 8K? And when you're large enough to fill out 8Ks, the only thing material is your operations side of the house. Losing another million passwords of your company is not a material event at companies that size. The only thing that's going to be material is your operations side of the house. And if you don't have an understanding of what you're going to fill out that 8K, then you're not deploying the technologies, people, and process ahead of time. So that kind of conversation will get a conversation quickly to board.
Yeah, no, and it connects a lot, and I saw it, like when I started doing OT security briefings and just talking about the general landscape. Take a lot, of course, from the Dragos report every year.
Yeah,
Mandatory
year review report dropping soon. Yeah,
that's what I was going to ask you,
yeah.
like how close, because it's usually April. Right?
Yeah, I think it's like a couple weeks. Dragos year in review. It's good. I like them every year, but it's our 8th one. And there's some really good stuff in there. It's like, it's so weird to me in the beginning of my career, like a new ICS malware or a new threat group is like, oh, wow. Now it's like page 22 in the report, like here's another one. You know, it's like there's a lot of stuff going on.
Very cool. Yeah, no, yeah, definitely mandatory reading. It's like, you know, for those of you new to ICS OT, you might be familiar with like the Verizon data breach investigation report. So I think, the Dragos report every year is the kind of the OT version of that. So definitely should mandatory reading for everybody, especially in this room. But yeah, I think once I started adding in the like sector and geography specific like incidents to those organizations, it's like the lights were coming on. So no, I appreciate that. For our new folks in here, and you talked a lot about this already this morning, but what are some of the things that they need to be doing to charge down the ICS OT path?
Yeah, I mean, first thing is like if you're in this room, take advantage of it. Again, like you've got a lot of people in this room that are main stage keynote speakers around the world. You've got a lot of people in this room that government seek, and they're just sitting here casually listening to this fireside. And so I'd be grabbing those folks and talking here at this event and going, hey, what do you think? The next thing is, again, I think it goes kind of the core principles, but like whatever path you choose is fine. So there's a lot of people that if you don't do this, you're doing it wrong. You don't do this, you're doing it wrong. I don't know. Like I grew up in the world of an intelligence analyst, even though I was a cyber person. And there was a fundamental understanding in the world of intel that you have an intelligence requirement that comes from some consumer. And you're there to satisfy the requirement. And the only thing Intel Analyst 1 and Intel Analyst 2 can agree on is that Intel Analyst 3 is wrong. Like that's it. So if you're satisfying the requirement of your consumer, everybody can be on X or in the back channel of Slack yelling about how you're doing it wrong all day long. But if the requirement's satisfied and you're the one doing it, you're doing it right. And I'll have so many people on Dale's blog or Ralph yelling at my people, whatever, being like, I don't see the ICS incidents. Like, are you an incident response company? No, we didn't fucking invite you. You know, of course you're not seeing them. And so just do whatever you think is right. Go down the path that you think is right. And if you satisfy those requirements and you're moving the needle, feel comfortable with that. So that's number one. I guess number two, after finding people in this room. And there's just a lot of material out there that's not available or wasn't available when we started. One of the reasons I started the Dragos Year in Review report was 8 years ago was when I entered the career, I didn't have anywhere to turn for like what are the actual lessons learned, like what's actually happening in the field. It was a lot of like you go to conferences and talk to people and go, well, what are you doing? What are you doing? Or like Joe's magic database of 500,000 attacks that no one's ever seen. And so like, it was all this like, I heard a thing about a thing, and I heard a thing about a thing. And it's like, it was just hearsay and anecdotal. And so we just want to say, you know what? Here's everything we're actually seeing, all the threats, all the vulnerabilities, all the incident response cases, all the lessons learned. Just whatever it is, sometimes it's gonna be more, sometimes it'll be less, sometimes it's exciting, sometimes it's not, but like, here's the facts. And like just that being available is way different than when you got started in this field, 15, 20 years ago. The ability to come together and have these conferences is way different. The ability that there's SANS training. I just authored SANS ICS 310. I feel like I'm pitching a lot. 310 was a class that we built explicitly to be affordable. SANS classes aren't affordable. And so SANS ICS 310 was Tim Conway, Jeff Shear, and I doing a class, and it's $500. And we're trying to give it away for free to everybody. Like, go to the summit, it's free. Take another ICS class, it's free with it. Like, your university partner with us, we'll try to get you free. It was literally just, how do we get free education out there? And like, that didn't exist before. And so if you just look around the community, there's a lot of places, but it's being here and asking those questions and you'll find it. But get in the field though. Nothing replaces getting in the field. You can be academic all day long, and I don't mean academic like being in university. I just mean you can be theoretical or academic about the conversation, or you can go do an assessment. You can go work at an asset owner. There's a lot of folks that'll come to Dragos or Mandiant or whatever and say, I want to be at Mandiant or I want to be at Dragos. I'm like, cool, show me your experience. Like, I'm new. I'm like, probably not coming here. And that sounds harsh, but let me be honest. We don't need you. I want you one day, but I want you to go get experience first. And the problem is you can't get the experience at the consultant firm. Not really. Go be an asset owner. You want to be in the ICS security field? Go work at your power company. Go work at the water company. Go work at the manufacturer. You will have 10,000 times more experience than any consultant that hasn't walking in the door. And then go be a consultant or vendor or whatever else and help other people and take that lessons learned. It's not the only path, but it's a pretty damn good one. And I think it's important that people realize that I got a kid coming out of college saying he wouldn't accept anything lower than a $150,000 job to start with. And I was like, you have no experience. Yeah, but this was my major. I was like, that's adorable, dude. Like, go work at a power company. Come call me. Like, I bet you could get there one day, but like, have realistic expectations. And I think there's a lot of the community, this is now just getting into ranting. There's a lot of the community though.
Rant away.
That, like, there's this balance. There's this like, treat people well and pay them well. And then people took that and went, yeah, we should all be driving Ferraris. I'm like, hold on. You know, like there's the extreme swing. That's the same thing, like, why is Rob beating up on Joe and Ralph so much? Because for like 8 years, I haven't said shit publicly about it. And then I've watched them make YouTube videos and LinkedIn posts and blog posts after blog posts after blog posts about my employees. And now I'm sitting on top of a multi-billion-dollar company. I'm going, you know what? I got a voice. Fuck those guys. And so I would just like to say that you have an opportunity, you got an opportunity to go do shit, but set realistic expectations. And as long as those expectations come with, I'm trying to help, and I understand that I'm not the first person to ever walk in this door, and I got a peer community that I can lean on, you're going to do wonderful.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, and thanks for sticking up for the against the bullies, because I've been on the receiving end of those.
I've watched it. Yeah.
Gentlemen, right? And I'm sorry. Yes, 3.5 did not exist in the Purdue model. My mistake.
The Purdue model is about time, not your network architecture. The name is very confusing to people. I understand. It's an enterprise reference architecture. It was not meant for your Cisco network architecture. It's about time. It's all it's about. Level 0, microseconds. Level 1, millisecond delays. Level 2, it's a reference architecture for time. So yeah, that post about that you getting yelled at was fucking stupid as well. It's like, just read the paper. They're like, IIoT was never considered in the Purdue model. I'm like, nobody read the fucking paper. I'm from Alabama and I read. Like, I can't be your standard, Like, somebody else has got to read this fucking paper. Yeah.
Too funny. So that's a lot of great, I think, suggestions for newer folks. What do you wish you saw from like the S4 crowd and the folks that have been around for...
I mean, I do love the S4 crowd and the S4 community, and there's a significant portion of it is everything that we're talking about. I get to be on stage or whatever and talk about like 1 or 2 antibodies in the community or a couple antibodies, and you'll be in those circles and you'll know when you've got in the wrong circle. When the circle is just talking about people not in the circle, like we wouldn't accept that for our children, and somehow it got cool in this community. Like you'll know when you're in that circle by the fact that you're sitting around bitching about people not there. I heard this person's doing this. Or can you believe that? I'm like, man, just go do work. So those circles exist, but they are small.
Yeah.
And they are the minority. And so if you look at the S4 crowd, you look at the S4 conversations, 99% of them are, man, here's what I was doing since last year. Here's the work that I did. Oh, this was exciting. You won't hear a single person that I can think of at S4 sitting around going, and this is how much money I made last year on the product, or here's how much money I made this last year in the consultant. You'll hear like, dude, I got to go in, and I got to fucking help this company, and we revolutionized this program, and now the metro is like safer. Like, you find genuinely authentic, amazing, just genuinely good human beings.
Yeah.
Find those circles. They're the more populated circles. When you find them, they're the ones you stick in.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say big part of those people are here today. And like you said, for those of you that are new, definitely start talking with the other people that are here. And we'll be here all day. I forgot about the after party tonight. So we're going to be at Armature Works from 5 to 7. So, and this is coming from someone who would go to a conference until he was 47 and not talk to another soul.
Yeah, no, we're all introverts, right, dude. So, but let me one more rant on that. And for those of you that are like, Rob just apparently treating this as the therapy. Yeah, I am. There's some of you in this room that know me. There's some of you that don't know me. There's some of you that wish you didn't know me. All right, so like I understand the spectrums here, but let me make an extraordinarily arrogant sounding point, or arrogant sounding statement to make a point. I'm not saying I'm the guy that should get called in the meetings. I'm not saying I'm the one that government should turn to, but I'm in those meetings and I get turned to. And like Davos, everyone talks about World Economic Forum. I've been a member of it for a while now, and they always treat it like it's the Illuminati, and it's just like a conference. But this year, I found the Illuminati party. All right, like, it finally made it in. And so let me make this very arrogant point. I went to this event, and I've been involved in a lot of these circles and working government challenges and all this other stuff. And I went to this private event, and there was about 100 of us, and 40 to 50 people in that room were like big time billionaires, like not small time billionaires, but big time billionaires. Like, yeah, whatever. There was 15 to 20 different sitting presidents of different countries around the world. There was multiple heads of military and state, Secretary General of NATO. It was about 100 of us. And I'm looking around going, what the fuck am I doing here? I got invited to the party because of the specialization critical infrastructure that we work on, and governments don't typically care about cyber, but the cyber of the critical infrastructure care a lot about. And so I'm in this room, and I'm the introvert, and I'm not talking, and I'm just like, oh my God, I see Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan, all these people, the CEO of Pfizer and shit. I'm like, fuck, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, I should be at the B-sides, like, this is weird. And this guy comes up to me and starts talking, and just chatting with me, and being really fucking nice. And I'm glad he came out to me and talked to me, because I'm the introvert that doesn't go out and talk to people. I know you'd never believe it with how much I talk, but like, I like this side because I can talk at. I'm not great with the interaction. And so, or starting the interaction. And so anyways, the guy and I start talking, and after a while he asked me what I do, told him about Dragos stuff. He's like, oh, we need your help. We're doing this, that, and the other. And I was like, what do you do? He's like, well, I'm the president of Kosovo. I'm like, all right, that's cool. Cool way to start. And after that, I started like networking with everybody else, and like seeing like all the very genuine, all these presidents, all these billionaires, very genuine, like, let's fix this, let's focus on this, let's do that. And I gotta tell you, here's my arrogant statement. It is really hard for me to go through my career hanging out with people you could name, meeting presidents, and all that kind of shit, ending up in a meeting like that because people care about our community and what we do, and then coming back to any small circle bitching about somebody. It just has never looked smaller to me. And so you may not go the same journey I've ever gone, but I hope you can just trust me. There's a point in time where that shit just seems small, and you could skip to the end and just not be part of it, because it's not fucking worth your time, and there are adversaries trying to hurt people, and that is worth your time.
Yeah. I remember the first time, that goes back, the first time I took your Greek class, and it was another one of those, like at the very end, there was a side conversation, and again, completely non-technical, but it was, at the end you were just like, you do you, just don't be a jerk.
Yeah, yeah, you don't be an asshole. Yeah, you don't ever quote me correctly.
Oh, well,
you called. You said somebody said "f yeah" whatever you. That's not what I said.
Oh.
I said "fuck yeah." It's like, I got very few words from Alabama, so I fill them in with cuss words. Yeah, but don't be an asshole. It's such an easy thing in life. Whatever religion, non-religion, policy, whatever, it all boils down to don't be an asshole.
Yeah, for sure. Well, to wrap up, I was thinking, how about where we're at today? Where are we winning? Where are we losing? And where do we need to improve?
Where we're at, we've got a vibrant community, a lot of people coming in, a lot of choices ahead of us in the paths we could take, and I hope we all choose to stay on the path of, like, let's listen to the asset owner operator, let's try to help them with their problems, let's try to walk in the door with, I have expertise, but I may not know what you need yet, so I'm going to ask questions and listen, and then add my expertise instead of talking at you. Yeah. In terms of, like, where we're winning on that side as well, I don't think there's ever been a better opportunity to come into this community. Like, again, with the availability of information, classes, conferences, people, training, whatever, like, you can fast forward your career really quickly in this field. It took us a long time to get here. It won't take you all as long. Where we're losing, I think it goes back to the small circles conversation. And those of you that work out in the field, you'll know this very well. But there's a lot of, like, online commentary or blogs, and be like, we've overinvested in this, or we've done this. And it's like, dude, you've not been out in the field. Like, I've heard this over and over, because obviously we care about things like network monitoring, visibility, and detection at Dragos. I've heard over and over, that market, it's saturated. When I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like nobody's doing it. Like, there's some, but we almost like talk about a concept, whether it's a technology, a training, a threat report. We almost like talk about something out loud and we go, great, we talked about it, it's done, on to the next thing. It's like, no, you got to go do it. You got to go actually implement that work. And so I think the investment and the operationalizing of that investment is very, very much in its infancy. A good example of that, just to make this clear for everybody, I had a CISO at a power, I got invited to the power company's board meeting by the CEO. The CISO stood up and said, hey, on the OT security side, we got Drago, so we're okay. And I was like, first of all, no silver bullets, including us. That's not the right answer. But second of all, I know out of like 500 transmission level substations you have, you deployed us at 1. Get the fuck back up there and say that one substation is really well taken care of. Like the rest of them, you know, you got to have an honest conversation. And some reason we just don't want to have very candid conversations. I watched a CISO of a Fortune 5 kind of company get up there and tell their board that they would be able to answer this question, this question, this question on their operations side within a 7-hour window. And I was like, dude, you haven't done anything yet. And they're like, yeah, but we'll get there one day. I'm like, that's okay. That story's fine, but tell the CEO that. You can't hide risk. This is also where like a number of the IT security community is like, that CISO from SolarWinds and whatever else, like, I can't believe this SEC was coming after the CISOs. We're just here to help. It's like, hold on. I remember the comics. I bet you all do too. The comic where the CISO's sitting at the children's table and the person comes and says, you can join. It's like, yeah, we're going to the big boy table. Welcome to the fucking big boy table, okay? As a CEO of a company, I can't stand in front of the board and lie. And if I do, I go to jail. I have financial accountability, even as a private sector company. I can't get in front of Congress under oath and say, it'll be okay and we're all fine, and it not be held accountable. There's a whole lot of CISOs that want to sell smoke and mirrors up because they don't want to scare the executives or highlight the issues. And it's like, that's your job. Your job is to be honest about it. And if you're not, I'm looking forward to your SEC commission hearing. Because I got to tell you, my buddy Paul Atkins is now in charge of the SEC, and he's not going to go easy on you. And I'm fucking looking forward to it. Because again, you can't hide risk because people depend on your infrastructure. If you say I'm doing my best, the resource I have, and we still got hacked, that's cool. But if you say my PowerPoint said we were good and then we weren't actually doing any of it, I'm looking forward to seeing the strikes. So I just think it's too serious. Again, where we're losing, and I'll make it succinct, where we're losing is what we're dealing with is really, really fucking important. Safety is important. Bhopal. Go back and look at the Bhopal incident and tell me that the shit doesn't matter. And Bhopal came back in the media last week or 2 weeks ago for moving all that decontaminated fucking trash that they had to another town in India to try to then further make it safe, and maybe they will, but the town was rightfully like, hold on, we don't know all these dangerous chemicals in our town. Imagine if there was like control systems connected to the internet findable and a showdown about that shit. We wouldn't sit here going like, well, that was just inappropriate. People can die. So I don't want to be the hyped up person that does this talk and then leaves. I want to tell you, you may not care about your security program, you may not care about your control system, but I can point to a couple state actors that do. And I promise you, if you don't believe in ICS threats, they believe in you. And one of these days, we have to appreciate that if you want to be a community of professionals, not a community of hackers, not a community of security rock stars, not cyber analysts, but if you want to be a community of professionals, you got to act like it. You got to be professional about certain topics, and safety is one of them. And I just think we got to do a lot better about taking that seriously. And then where we're going, at least from my stance on the, now I'm going to take off the Dragos hat, magic, take off the other hats, put on the military hat, so breaking all commercial, whatever discussions. I'll tell you on the military side, one of my first observations, or one of my I've known it for a while, but first things I've sort of taken in was, okay, when I have this OT response plan, we got to make some changes. Because they don't have an OT response plan today, which is scary. You know, that's great. That's the reason I'm back. I was like, cool. I don't need to come back. What's your plan? They're like, well, we don't have one. I was like, I'll be back. All right. So number one, you're gonna have to get uncomfortable. I remember sitting in a room when Ann Neuenberger and those folks back when she's at the agency called me into a meeting, and Iran had just shot down the drone some year, and it was me, Kevin Mandia, and Dmitry Alperovich. And we were like, what are we doing here? NSA, 7 o'clock in the morning. And Ann said, Iran just shot down the drone. We don't know what's going to happen next, but there's options being put in front of the president, up to and including kinetic. And none of this is told to me with clearance, so I'm saying it as it was, but I'm not implying anything further. But anyways, it could get kinetic. I was like, great. And we know their playbook is to go after critical infrastructure. I was like, and they're like, you're the 3 companies they're going to call, Mandiant, Dragos, CrowdStrike. You're going to be involved. So how can we help you? What do you need? You need indicators? What do you need? And I was like, Ann, I need a phone call 6 fucking months ago. The day of the incident is not the time for this shit. And she said, well, I can't do that because competitors will complain. I was like, do those competitors have IR teams? If so, they should be here. Well, no. I was like, so you're telling me competitors without incident response teams can write you an angry letter and have sway because of perception? She's like, yeah. And I was like, national security can't live with perception. If you have capabilities to bring, welcome to the party. If you don't, sit down. It's okay. So there's going to be some uncomfortable choices made. When the U.S. goes to war eventually with China, and I think, unfortunately, it may happen. I hope it doesn't. Nobody likes war, least of all the military. But if it does happen, there's going to be a handful of companies that you'd want involved in that you as citizens could point to and go, I want them in this. And then there's going to be some companies like, why are you here? OpenAI may be a cool company. OpenAI shouldn't be having any discussion to bring back up the power grid. So I'd like to figure that out ahead of time and say, anybody can join, but here's the bar, here's the ride. If you're this tall and look this way, you can be here. But if you're not, fuck your perception, get out. The second thing is certifications. And I know this sounds like a very sans thing, but I'm going to take a different angle on it. If you want to operate the electric system in the United States, you go through NERC training, you become a NERC operator, you get a background check, lots of training, lots of certifications. If the power grid goes down, any asshole off the street is allowed to come back in and recover it. How the fuck does that make sense? Okay? True. I'm all for having as much credentialing as the barbers in your states for what you can and can't do on critical infrastructure. I think if you're operating inside of a nuclear facility, well, you probably ought to be credentialed to do that. And I'd like to see us move that direction. Now, the credentials can't be gatekeeping. It can't be a SANS cert. It costs $8,000. I don't want to see that. But I want to see government own the ability to say, we are going to validate people, and anybody can go through it. But if you're validated and maintain your credentials, welcome to the party. But otherwise, again, don't call me on the day of the incident. So where we're going from my world is a lot stricter, and some of you may not like that. But again, to be the arrogant one, because that's apparently the card I'm playing today, when we are in conflict, I mean, look around. You're going to want to know the people around you are people you've met before, come to the conference. You're going to want to make sure the people around you deserve to be there with credentialing and background checks. And you're not going to care about perception when you're asking to make sure the vaccines, the medicine, the lights, the water, the routing gets done for your kids. And so I'm looking forward to just taking a sledgehammer to that shit. And for those of you who are like, Rob, you're coming back in the Trump administration, I also want to be very fucking clear. I accepted this position like 6 months ago ahead of the election. And I am a true believer that the military is, has been, will be nonpartisan. My view is very simple of anybody that wants to stand up and serve, you're welcome, call me, we can get you in. Anybody that doesn't, you are serving in lots of other ways than being in uniform. None of that shit has to do with any administration because every one of us have got kids or know somebody that does or have families that we want to protect. And again, take it serious. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you listening to all the ranting. Good luck with what you do. And I wish you the absolute best at the conference and the best week ahead of you. Thank you so much.